Ambassador stepped off the transport ship and felt the artificial gravity pull at his 3 legs. The human colony of New Pyongyang stretched before him, a sprawling city of metal and glass that seemed to grow right out of the red soil. He had visited 200 worlds in his 400 years of life, but human colonies always felt different. They felt temporary, like the humans were ready to leave at any moment. A human woman waited at the landing platform. She was small, like most humans, with dark hair pulled back from her face. She smiled and held out her hand in that strange human greeting. "Ambassador, welcome. I'm doctor and your guide during your stay." She spoke through a translator device, though had learned some human languages. There were too many of them. Touched her hand briefly with one of his manipulator appendages. "Thank you, doctor. I'm honored to observe humanity's progress." As they walked through the colony, made mental notes. Everything moved fast here. Humans rushed past, always busy, always working. Construction drones built new structures at a pace that would take his own people months to approve, let alone build. In just 2 centuries, humans had spread across 80 star systems. It had taken the Concordat Alliance 2,000 years to achieve the same. "You build quickly," observed. Laughed, "We're impatient. It's both our greatest strength and our biggest flaw." They passed through a market where humans traded goods from a dozen worlds. Saw food, art, technology, and weapons. So many weapons. Even civilian humans carried small arms on their belts. This disturbed him. "Why do your people carry weapons in peacetime?" he asked. Looked at the armed civilians and shrugged. "Old habit. Where we come from, you never know when you might need protection. Our planet was dangerous." Was dangerous, past tense. "We made it safe. Took us about 10,000 years, but we did it. Killed or tamed everything that wanted to kill us." She said this casually, as if it were normal. Skin rippled with unease. His own species had evolved on a peaceful world with few predators. The concept of spending 10,000 years in constant battle for survival seemed like a nightmare. That evening, Captain Han invited them to observe military exercises. Was a tall human with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen combat. His uniform displayed symbols recognized as military honors. "Ambassador, I hope you don't mind, but we're conducting night operations training. You're welcome to watch from the observation deck." In the darkness, watched human soldiers move through a mock battlefield. They worked in small teams, communicating with hand signals and short whispered words. They moved like predators, efficient and deadly. The exercise scenario simulated an enemy attack on the colony. "This seems excessive for a peaceful colony," said carefully. "The Concordat has maintained peace for 12,000 years. What enemy do you prepare for?" Captain didn't look away from the training exercise. "The one we haven't met yet." "That seems paranoid." "That's called prepared," replied. "We have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst." Commander Bin's tactical officer joined them on the observation deck. He was younger, intense, with quick movements. "Ambassador, how many wars has your species fought?" "Thought 3 in our recorded history of 50,000 years. Small conflicts over resources. We resolved them through negotiation." Bin exchanged a glance with Captain. "We've fought over 10,000 wars in just 5,000 years of recorded history. We know war. We're good at it. Too good, maybe." This number shocked. 10,000 wars. How did your species survive? "By being better at killing than anything that tried to kill us," said simply. The next day, took to the long-range sensor station. The facility sat on a hill overlooking the colony. Enormous dishes pointed at the stars. Human technicians monitored screens showing data from across the sector. A technician suddenly stood up, her face pale. "Doctor, Captain needs to see this. Now." Within minutes, and Bin arrived. They studied the sensor data with serious expressions, looked at the screens but couldn't understand what concerned them. "What is it?" he asked. pointed at the display. Unknown vessels, big ones, at the galaxy's edge moving towards civilized space. That's Concordat territory, said. The defensive packs will handle any intrusion. We have 47 member species and thousands of ships. When was the last time those ships fought a real battle? Ben asked. Felt defensive. We maintain our fleets properly. They conduct regular exercises. Exercises, Ben repeated, as if the word tasted bad. When was the last actual war? About 8,000 years ago. A small border dispute between two outer worlds. It was resolved with minimal casualties. Captain turned away from the screen. We need to report this to Earth Command. Ambassador, I recommend you contact the Concordat Council. You're overreacting, said, but doubt crept into his mind. The Concordat has faced threats before. Our defensive systems are strong. They're untested, said. There's a difference between strong and tested. Over the next week, more reports came in. The unknown vessels they were moving faster now, heading toward Concordat space. Sent reports to the Council but received calm responses. Everything was under control. The defensive fleets were moving into position. There was no cause for alarm. The humans didn't agree. Watched as the colony's military went to high alert. Soldiers patrolled the streets. Ships that had been scheduled for trade missions were recalled and fitted with weapons. Civilian volunteers trained for defense duties. One night found Doctor on an observation deck, looking at the stars. Your people are afraid, he said. Yes, she agreed. The Concordat will protect this sector. We have treaties, defensive pacts. We've maintained peace for thousands of years. Turned to look at him. In the dim light, her eyes seemed sad. Ambassador, can I tell you something about humans? Of course. We've never had the luxury of peace. Our history is written in blood. We've fought each other, fought our world, fought everything. We've survived ice ages, plagues, genocides, world wars. We clawed our way up from caves to starships over the bodies of countless dead. We know what extinction looks like because we've caused it and narrowly avoided it dozens of times. She pointed at the stars. So when we see something unknown heading our way, we don't trust treaties or defensive pacts. We trust armor, weapons, and the willingness to use them. That's not paranoia, Ambassador. That's pattern recognition. Wanted to argue, but something in her words resonated with a deep, ancient fear. His species had never faced real existential threat. They had evolved in safety, built their civilization in peace. The humans had evolved in a nightmare and learned to thrive there. I hope you're wrong, said quietly. So do I, replied, but we're not. 3 days later, the first Concordat defensive fleet made contact with the unknown vessels at the galaxy's edge. The fleet was destroyed in less than 4 hours. The messages arrived at New Pyongyang in the middle of the night, listened in horror as the reports came in. Thousands of ships, millions of Concordat lives, gone. Captain found him in the communications center, staring at the casualty reports. Ambassador, we need to talk about evacuation protocols, said gently. They're coming, aren't they? Whispered. Yes. And the Concordat can't stop them. Put a hand on shoulder, a gesture of comfort. No, but we can. The emergency council meeting took place in a cold, gray room deep underground. Sat among representatives from a dozen Concordat species, all listening to the same terrible reports. The unknown enemy had a name now, the Devourers. They consumed everything in their path, breaking down matter and converting it into more ships, more weapons, more of themselves. A holographic display showed the devastation. 3 Concordat worlds had been stripped bare in just 5 days. The planets were left as dead rocks, their atmospheres consumed, their oceans boiled away. Billions dead. We need to negotiate, said Ambassador, a peaceful species that communicated through bioluminescence. All conflicts can be resolved through dialogue. They don't communicate, reported Fleet Commander Vex. "We've tried every known language, every mathematical sequence, every peaceful signal. They only transmit one thing: hunger." Sub-Zero was in the 3rd Defensive Sector. He had received word that morning that evacuation ships were overwhelmed. There weren't enough vessels to save everyone. His birth pod family was trapped there. Admiral of the Earth Defense Force stood at the end of the table. She was older than most humans had met, with gray hair and scars on her face. She had arrived with a fleet of 200 human ships, and she looked angry. "With respect, ambassadors, you're wasting time," said. "These things aren't here to talk. They're here to feed. We know what we're facing because we've seen it before." "Impossible," said Ambassador. "Nothing like this has ever existed in our records. Not in space, maybe, but on Earth we had creatures called locusts, swarms that consumed everything, then moved on. We also had ourselves." Pulled up historical data. "We humans nearly destroyed our own world 3 times. We know what unstoppable consumption looks like." "What do you suggest?" asked the Concordat Prime, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form. "Let us fight. Give us full military authorization and stay out of our way." The council chamber erupted in protests. Listened as various species argued about human methods being too violent, too crude, too dangerous. The humans had only been in space for 200 years. What could they possibly know that civilizations tens of thousands of years old didn't? Waited for silence. How many wars has the Concordat fought in the last 1,000 years? No one answered. "I'll tell you, none. Your fleets are ceremonial, your weapons are antiques, your soldiers have never seen real combat." She leaned forward. "Earth has fought 23 major wars and hundreds of minor conflicts in just the last 500 years. We know war. We live and breathe it. It's in our blood, our culture, our nightmares. Let us do what we do best." The council voted. Humanity received limited military authorization to defend Concordat space. Noticed the word limited and Sauce's cold smile. She had gotten what she wanted. After the meeting, approached her. "Admiral, you seem confident." "I'm realistic, Ambassador. This enemy doesn't stop, doesn't negotiate, doesn't tire. The only way to beat something like that is to be worse than it is." "That's horrifying." "Yes, agreed. War usually is." Evacuated to Earth as his fell. He watched from a transport ship as the Devourers consumed Sierra in 3 days. The planet that had existed for 4 billion years, supported life for 2 billion years, and birthed his civilization 50,000 years ago, was gone. Just gone. Earth was different than he expected. Despite being humanity's, it was remarkably beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. But the beauty hid a violent history. Doctor met him at the spaceport and took him to the military command center. "I'm sorry about your world," she said quietly. Couldn't speak. The grief was too fresh. The command center buzzed with activity. Humans worked at hundreds of stations, coordinating fleets, moving supplies, planning battles. In just 48 hours, humanity had mobilized more military force than the entire Concordat had assembled in a decade. Engineer Wu approached them, carrying data tablets. He was young, enthusiastic, and seemed excited despite the crisis. "Doctor, the Admiral wants you to brief the Ambassador on Project Hellfire." Followed them to a secure room. Wu pulled up schematics for weapons unlike anything had seen. These weren't clean energy weapons that disabled ships. These were designed to kill, to cause maximum damage and suffering. "We call these kinetic shredders," Wu explained. "They fire dense metal projectiles at relativistic speeds. When they hit a target, they don't just pierce it. They tear it apart from the inside." "That's barbaric," said. "That's effective," Wu corrected. "The Concordat weapons are designed to minimize casualties. Ours are designed to win. There's a difference." Showed him more. Fusion bombs that could crack planets. biological weapons that could sterilize entire ecosystems, nanoweapons that dissolved matter at the molecular level. "You've built weapons to destroy yourselves," said in horror. "Yes," agreed. "Over and over again. We've imagined every possible way to kill and built the tools to do it. Now we're going to use them on something that actually deserves it." The first major battle came at the outer markers, a defensive line humanity had established. Lieutenant commanded a Marine division aboard the assault ship Vengeance, watched from a safe observation vessel as the human fleet engaged the Devourer swarm. It was nothing like the clean space battles in Concordat simulations. It was chaos. The Devourers outnumbered the humans 10-1. Their ships were organic, twisted things that looked more like tumors than vessels. They fought with no tactics, just overwhelming mass. The humans fought back with terrifying efficiency. Their ships moved in coordinated patterns, concentrating fire on single targets. When a Devourer ship got too close, they rammed it, watched in shock as human pilots deliberately flew their fighters into enemy vessels, sacrificing themselves to take out larger targets. "Why do they do that?" he asked the observation officer. "Because it works," the officer replied simply. "One pilot, one ship versus a Devourer carrier with 1,000 troops. The math is simple." Lieutenant's division boarded a damaged Devourer ship, watched the helmet camera feeds. The interior was organic, pulsing with biological growth. The Marines moved through it with weapons blazing, killing everything that moved. It was brutal, close-quarters combat. Saw humans die, torn apart by Devourer creatures. He saw humans kill, burning enemies with plasma torches and explosive rounds. His voice came over the calm despite the carnage. "We've reached the central chamber, setting charges now." The Devourer ship exploded from within. His team barely escaped, losing half their members in the process. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, 40% of the human fleet was destroyed or damaged. 12,000 humans were dead, but the Devourer swarm had been stopped. For the first time since they appeared, the enemy had been forced to retreat. Watched as the surviving ships returned to base. He expected mourning, sadness, defeat. Instead, he found humans celebrating. They had won. Admiral found him in the observation deck, staring at the victory celebration below. "You look confused, Ambassador. You lost 12,000 people. How is this a victory?" Stood beside him, watching her people below. "Because we stopped them, because they learned they can be hurt, because every battle we win, we learn more about how to kill them." She turned to look at him. "Ambassador, you come from a species that values every individual life. That's beautiful, but we come from a world where life was cheap and survival was earned through blood. We learned early that sometimes you have to sacrifice the few to save the many." "That's a terrible lesson." "Yes," agreed, "but it's the lesson that's going to save your people." Watched as a pilot missing an arm hugged her crew, all of them laughing despite their injuries. He watched as engineers immediately began repairing damaged ships, working without rest. He watched as Lieutenant, covered in burns and bruises, volunteered for the next boarding mission. These humans had seen horror and death, and they were ready to see more. They didn't break, they didn't stop, they didn't quit. For the first time since the Devourers appeared, felt something other than despair. He felt hope, and that terrified him almost as much as the enemy did. The war spread like a disease across the galaxy. 30 sectors fell in 60 days. The Concordat species tried everything they knew: diplomacy, defensive positions, evacuation. Nothing worked. The Devourers consumed worlds faster than the Concordat could evacuate them. Worked from a mobile command station that jumped from system to system, always staying ahead of the enemy. He had become humanity's official observer and unofficial documentarian, recording everything for whatever future might remain. General Young ran the theater command from a ship called Reckoning. He was a massive human from old battles, with eyes that had seen too much death. He studied tactical displays like a chess master, moving fleets and armies across the map. "Ambassador, you should see this," Young said, gesturing to his command table. The holographic display showed 3 human colony worlds in the enemy's path: Horizon, New Soul, and Redemption. Combined population, 15 million humans. "We're evacuating them," Young said. "Every civilian will be off-world in 72 hours. Felt relief. "That's good, at least they'll be safe. "We're leaving the infrastructure intact. Power plants, factories, shipyards, everything." Stared at him. "Why would you do that? The Devourers will consume it all." Young smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "Exactly. We've rigged everything with explosives. The Devourers will land, start feeding, and will detonate the entire infrastructure simultaneously. We estimate we can destroy 40% of their invasion fleet." "But those are your worlds, your homes." "Were our worlds," Young corrected. "Now they're traps. Buildings are just buildings, Ambassador. We can rebuild. But if we can take out a significant chunk of their fleet, we save hundreds of other worlds." Dr. A joined them. She specialized in enemy behavior and had been studying devourer patterns. "We're also broadcasting something new," she said. "We think it might help." She played an audio file. It was sounds from human history: screaming, explosions, weapons fire, battle cries in a dozen languages, the sound of armies clashing. "You're playing recordings of your wars?" asked. "We're advertising," explained, "showing them what they're really facing. Every species they've encountered so far has been peaceful. They've never met predators like us. We want them to know what's coming." "This is psychological warfare," said. "This is survivor's instinct," replied. "In nature, dangerous prey advertises their danger. Bright colors, warning sounds. We're doing the same thing." Over the next week, watched as Young's trap played out perfectly. The Devourers landed on all 3 worlds, began consuming the infrastructure, and were destroyed when everything exploded simultaneously. The enemy fleet was devastated. But it cost more than just empty buildings. 200 human soldiers had stayed behind to make sure the detonation timing was perfect. They died with the enemy. Captain led the fighter wing that covered the evacuation. He was young, barely 30, but flew like he had been born in a cockpit. His squadron conducted what they called suicide runs, flying directly into devourer formations to draw fire away from transport ships. Accompanied squadron during a mission to cover a Concordat evacuation. The transports were slow, packed with refugees from a dozen species. The Devourers were closing in. "All wings, we're buying time. Remember the drill: hit hard, hit fast, and if your ship is damaged, take as many with you as you can." Listen to the calm chatter as the pilots engaged. Their casualty rate was 60%, but the transports escaped. After the battle, only 12 of its original 30 pilots returned. "How can you ask them to die like that?" asked in the debriefing room. Looked at his surviving pilots, all exhausted, several injured. "I don't ask them, they volunteer, every single one." He turned to, "Ambassador, do you know why?" "No." "Because we understand what's at stake. This isn't about honor or glory. It's about survival. If we don't stop them here, they'll consume everything. Our families, our worlds, our entire species. So we fight. And if we have to die to win, we die." One of the pilots, a young woman named, spoke up. "My grandmother survived the Third World War on Earth. She told me stories about what humans did to each other. Terrible things. But she also told me that we survived because we never gave up, never stopped fighting, even when it seemed hopeless. This is the same thing, just a different enemy." Interviewed dozens of human soldiers over the following weeks. Their stories were all similar. They had seen death, dealt death, and accepted death as part of their reality. A Marine named told him, We've been killing and dying for causes since we figured out how to make weapons. This is just another war. We'll win it the same way we won all the others, by being more willing to die than the enemy is. This attitude horrified the other Concordat species. When humanity shared their weapons technology, offering tools designed to maximize enemy suffering, most species refused on moral grounds. These weapons are cruel, argued Ambassador. They cause unnecessary pain. General Young responded coldly. Pain makes the enemy hesitate. Hesitation gives us advantage. Advantage wins battles. We're not here to be moral. We're here to survive. Slowly, desperately, other species began adopting human tactics. The peaceful Concordat races learned to set traps, to sacrifice positions for strategic gain, to kill without mercy. Watched as civilizations that had known 10,000 years of peace transformed into war machines. But they were slow learners. Battles that humans won with acceptable casualties cost the Concordat species devastating losses. They didn't have humanity's instinct for violence, their comfort with death. During a particularly difficult battle, found himself in a bunker with Commander Bin and a mixed unit of human and Concordat soldiers. The Devourers had broken through the defensive line and were overrunning the position. The Concordat soldiers panicked, some freezing, others breaking ranks. The human soldiers remained calm, methodically falling back while maintaining fire discipline. "Hold the line," Bin shouted. "We just need 5 more minutes." A Concordat soldier near was sobbing, unable to move. A human private barely 20 years old grabbed the soldier and pulled him to cover. "Hey, stay with me. Focus on my voice. You're okay. Just keep shooting." The soldier asked, "How are you not scared?" The human private laughed. "I'm terrified, but fear doesn't change what needs to be done." They held the position for the 5 minutes needed. Half the unit died. The human private was among them, killed by a devourer weapon while covering the retreat. The Concordat soldier he had helped survived and later asked why the human had sacrificed himself. "Because that's what they do," said quietly. "They protect, even when it costs them everything." The breaking point came 3 months into the war. The Concordat Council was ready to negotiate surrender, ready to offer the Devourers everything if it would stop the killing. General Young refused to attend the surrender meeting. "We don't surrender," he told, "not when we can still fight." But so many have died, millions of humans, billions of other species. Young leaned back in his chair, looking tired for the first time. "Ambassador, let me tell you about humanity. We've faced extinction a dozen times on our own world. Ice ages, super volcanoes, plagues, wars. We've been down to a few thousand individuals and clawed our way back. You know why? Because we're too stupid or too stubborn to give up. Maybe both." He pulled up casualty reports. 40 million humans dead. That's a number that should break any species, but we've lost that many before and kept going. We lost 100 million in the Third World War and still rebuilt. We lost half our population to the plague years and still survived. This is just another catastrophe. We'll get through it. Even if everyone else surrenders. Especially if everyone else surrenders. Someone has to fight, might as well be us. We're good at it. Watched as humanity prepared for what they called Operation Hammer. It was a massive counteroffensive that would commit every available human fleet to simultaneous strikes across a dozen Devourer-held systems. Doctor explained the strategy. "We've learned their patterns. They're efficient but predictable. They concentrate forces on high-value targets. So we're going to hit their supply lines, their staging areas, their low-value holdings. Force them to spread out. Then we hit them where they're weak." "This could fail catastrophically," said. "Yes," agreed. "But sitting behind defensive lines definitely fails. We've run the numbers. Aggressive action gives us a 30% chance of winning. Defensive action gives us 0%. Those are good odds." 30% is not good odds. Young overheard and laughed. Ambassador, humans have won battles with worse odds than that. We once had a commander hold a mountain pass with 300 soldiers against an army of thousands. We've had pilots take down capital ships with single fighters. We've had scientists create solutions to impossible problems. 30%. That's practically a guarantee. As the operation launched, realized he had stopped thinking like his own species and started thinking like the humans. He found himself calculating acceptable losses, strategic trade-offs, victory conditions measured in blood. The peaceful, civilized ambassador who had arrived at New Pyongyang 6 months ago no longer existed. The war had changed him, just as it had changed everyone. And the humans, these violent, stubborn, impossible humans, had shown him what it truly meant to fight for survival. 6 months into the war, humanity had lost 40 million people. The number haunted dreams. That was more than the total population of most concordat species. Yet humanity fought harder than ever. The concordat species were breaking. Some had sued for peace, offering their worlds to the Devourers in exchange for survival. It never worked. The Devourers didn't negotiate. They consumed the delegates along with everything else. Other species simply fled to the galaxy's far corners. Hopping distance would save them. Only humanity kept fighting, and slowly, impossibly, they were winning. Fleet Admiral commanded the counteroffensive from her flagship Indomitable. She was older than most military humans, nearly 70, but her mind was sharp as broken glass. She had fought in 3 human wars before the Devourers arrived, and she understood conflict at a level that terrified. "Ambassador, come see this," she called from her tactical station. Floated over in the reduced gravity of the command deck. The holographic display showed Devourer supply routes, now marked with red X's where human fleets had struck. "We've cut off their reinforcement chains in 12 sectors," explained. "They're overextended. They expanded too fast, consumed too much, and now they can't supply their forward positions. We're starving them. They're consuming entire worlds. How can they run out of supplies?" "Because war is logistics," said patiently. "Doesn't matter how many soldiers you have if you can't feed them, arm them, move them. The Devourers need constant biomass input to maintain their fleet. We've been destroying their harvest worlds before they can fully consume them, poisoning others with radiation, making them work for every meal." Operation Hammer had succeeded beyond expectations. Humanity's aggressive multi-front assault had forced the Devourers to spread their forces thin. Now, human fleets hunted isolated Devourer groups, destroying them before they could regroup. But the cost remained terrible. Reviewed casualty reports daily. Every battle won meant thousands of humans died. Yet they never stopped volunteering. The recruitment centers on Earth had waiting lists. The turning point came at a place humans called Harper's Stand. Sergeant Jin commanded a ground defense unit protecting a Concordat refugee station. The station held 200,000 civilians from a dozen species. The Devourers wanted it. Jin's unit numbered 300 soldiers. The Devourers sent 50,000 troops. Watched the battle feed from orbit. The humans had fortified a narrow canyon, the only approach to the station. They had mines, automated turrets, and limited ammunition. They had no hope of survival. Jin's voice came over the comm, calm and professional. "Command, this is Harper Defense Unit. Enemy contact in 5 minutes. We'll hold as long as we can. Make sure those transports get out." The battle lasted 17 days. Couldn't believe it. Every tactical model said the position should fall in hours, but the humans held. They used every trick, every strategy, every desperate measure. They collapsed tunnels on enemy formations. They lured Devourers into kill zones. When they ran out of ammunition, they fought hand-to-hand. The Concordat transports evacuated all 200,000 civilians over those 17 days. Jin's last transmission came on day 17. Transports are clear. Mission accomplished. It's been an honor. Then silence. When a relief force finally broke through, they found the canyon filled with devourer corpses, tens of thousands of them, and 12 human survivors out of 300. Sergeant Jin was among the survivors, barely alive, holding a position over the bodies of his fallen soldiers. The stand became legendary across the galaxy. Other species called it the 17 Days of Fire. Songs were written about it. Memorials were built. Jin refused to be called a hero. "We just did our job," he said from his hospital bed. Anyone would have done the same. But knew that wasn't true. No one else would have done the same. Only humans had that particular brand of stubborn courage. Admiral visited Jin in the hospital, pinning medals on his chest that he would never wear. "The Council wants to meet you," she told him. "I'd rather go back to my unit, ma'am." "What's left of your unit is getting a month of mandatory rest. You held longer than anyone thought possible. You bought time for Operation Spearhead." Learned about Operation Spearhead in a classified briefing. Doctor, one of humanity's top scientists, had developed something called the Reaper Protocol. She was young, intense, with dark circles under her eyes from working endless hours. "It's a quantum virus," explained, pulling up complex diagrams. "It targets the specific biological markers of devourer tissue. Once released into their network, it spreads through their communication system, corrupting their DNA and causing catastrophic cellular breakdown." "You've created a biological weapon," said Shocked. "We've created a solution," corrected. "The devourers are essentially one massive organism connected through a biological network. Kill the network, kill the swarm." "Why haven't you used it?" Fleet Admiral answered. "Because it requires delivery to the heart of their swarm, to their nexus, the central hub where all devourer ships connect. And once the virus is deployed, there's no escape. The ship carrying it will be destroyed along with everything else." "A suicide mission," said quietly. "Yes." "Who will volunteer?" Smiled sadly. "Everyone. We've already received 10,000 applications from qualified pilots and crews. We have to turn people away." Couldn't comprehend it. 10,000 humans willing to die to deliver a weapon that might work. Might. The virus was theoretical. It could fail. The mission could fail. Everything could fail. "Why would they volunteer?" he asked. Commander Na stepped forward. She would captain the mission ship. She was middle-aged, calm, with the bearing of someone who had made peace with death. "Because it's necessary. Because if we don't try, we definitely lose. Because someone has to do it and we're capable." "That's not enough reason to die." Na looked at him with something like pity. "Ambassador, you still don't understand us. We don't need a good reason to die. We just need a reason. Saving the galaxy, that's a great reason. Better than most humans throughout history got." The selection process for the crew was brutal. Only the best pilots, engineers, and soldiers were chosen. The ship itself, another Indomitable, was retrofitted with the fastest engines humanity had ever built, the best shields, the most advanced weapons. They would need everything. The journey to the Nexus cut through the heart of devourer-controlled space. Thousands of enemy ships waited between the fleet and their target. Requested to join the mission, Admiral tried to talk him out of it. "You're a non-combatant, ambassador. You don't have to do this." "I've watched your people die for 6 months," said. "I've documented your sacrifice, your courage, your stubbornness. If this is the final mission, I should be there to witness it." Studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You've earned it. Welcome aboard." The night before launch, walked through the ship. He met the crew, all volunteers, all knowing they wouldn't return. They weren't sad or scared. They were determined. A young engineer named showed the reactor room. "This ship is built to run hot. We're going to push the engines beyond safety limits. Might explode before we even reach the Nexus. But if it gets us there faster, it's worth it." A pilot named Wu laughed when asked if he was afraid. Terrified. But fear doesn't change what needs to be done. My father told me that before he died fighting the Devourers. His father told him that during the Fourth Corporate War. His father told him that during the unification battles. It's what we do. We face the fear and do the job anyway. Doctor found in the observation deck, staring at Earth. I never thought I'd die, admitted. My species lives 800 years on average. I had centuries ahead of me, plans, dreams, all gone. I'm sorry, said. This isn't your fight, you didn't have to come. Yes, I did. Your species is sacrificing everything to save mine. The least I can do is witness it, document it, make sure the galaxy remembers what humanity did here. Smiled. We don't do it for the glory or the memory. We do it because it's right. I know, that's what makes you terrifying. You don't fight for gain or glory. You fight for others and you're willing to die doing it. No wonder the galaxy is learning to fear you. The launch came at dawn, Earth time. The Indomitables slipped out of orbit, accompanied by escort ships that would take them as far as possible. Watched the blue planet fade in the distance. Somewhere down there, families were saying goodbye to loved ones on this ship. Children were losing parents. Parents were losing children, but they didn't protest. They didn't beg them to stay. They understood what was at stake. Commander Na stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, watching the stars ahead. All stations report ready. Helm, set course for the Nexus. Maximum speed. Maximum speed, aye, the pilot responded. The Indomitable jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward the heart of the enemy swarm, toward victory or death. Realized it didn't matter which they found. The humans had already won the only battle that mattered. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight for something greater than yourself. The Indomitable flew through hell, watched from the observation deck as Devourer ships swarmed around them like insects. The escort fleet had fallen away hours ago, unable to keep pace or survive the intensity of enemy fire. Now they were alone. Commander Na kept her voice steady over the ship-wide comm. All crew, this is the captain. We're entering the dense zone. It's going to get rough. Stay focused. Stay sharp. We're not dead until we're dead. The ship shuddered as enemy fire hammered the shields. Explosions lit up the darkness outside. Human fighters launched from the Indomitable's bays, tiny vessels piloted by volunteers who knew they would never return home. They flew into the enemy swarm to draw fire away from the main ship. Watched them die. One by one, the fighters' signatures disappeared from the tactical display. But their sacrifice bought seconds, and seconds added up to minutes, and minutes meant the Indomitable survived a little longer. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported an engineer, sealing it now. Fire in Reactor 3, called another voice. Suppression systems engaged. Enemy cruiser targeting our stern, evasive maneuvers. The bridge crew worked with mechanical efficiency, responding to each crisis without panic. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. And now they were living it. Doctor worked at a science station, monitoring the Reaper protocol virus. The weapon that would end the war sat in a containment pod, waiting to be deployed. She caught his eye and gave him a small smile. Not how I imagined spending my 40s, she said. I thought I'd be teaching at a university, maybe writing a book, not carrying a doomsday weapon into the heart of an alien swarm. Regrets? Asked. None. This matters. This is worth dying for. The journey took 3 days. 3 days of constant battle, constant damage, constant loss. The crew slept in shifts, ate at their stations, lived knowing each moment could be their last. On the second day, they lost main power for 6 hours. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. The ship drifted, vulnerable, while engineers worked frantically to restore the reactor. Devourer ships closed in, sensing weakness. Commander Na activated every defensive weapon manually, firing from the bridge controls while the weapons officer worked on restoring automated systems. "Come on then," she whispered, targeting another enemy ship. "Come get us." The power came back online just as Devourer boarding craft attached to the hull. Marines rushed to repel boarders, listened to the calm chatter as humans fought hand-to-hand in the corridors, screaming, gunfire, explosions. A young Marine, no older than 20, fell back past position, blood pouring from a wound. She looked up at him with dying eyes. "Did we hold them?" "Yes," lied gently, "you held them." She smiled and stopped breathing. They held the borders, barely. Of the 80 Marines assigned to interior defense, 35 survived. On the third day, they reached the Nexus. It was massive, a structure larger than a planet, organic and twisted, pulsing with biological light. Thousands of Devourer ships orbited it, connected by tendrils of living tissue. This was the heart of the swarm, the central mind that coordinated the entire invasion. "Target acquired," Null announced. "All hands prepare for final approach. It's been an honor serving with you." The crew responded in unison. "Honor is ours, Captain." The Indomitable accelerated toward the Nexus. Enemy fire intensified. The shields failed. Hull plating melted away. Entire sections of the ship were exposed to vacuum. Sealed himself in the observation deck, recording everything. If by some miracle his recording survived, the galaxy would know what happened here. Doctor moved the virus to the deployment system, but something was wrong. The pod wouldn't lock into position. A malfunction, probably from the battle damage. "I need to do it manually," she said into her comm. "Someone has to go outside and secure it." "That's a death sentence," Null replied. "The radiation levels." "I know, but it needs to be done." Before anyone could stop her, suited up and went outside. Watched through the cameras as she crawled across the ship's hull, exposed to enemy fire and radiation. Her hands shook as she worked to secure the virus pod. "Almost there," she gasped. The radiation was killing her. Could see her movements becoming slower, weaker, but she didn't stop. She secured the pod, locked it into place, and activated the deployment system. "It's done," she whispered. "Deploy when ready." She didn't make it back inside. The radiation had already destroyed her cells. She sat down on the hull, looking out at the Nexus, and stopped moving. Whispered, "Thank you." The Indomitable breached the Nexus's outer defenses. The ship was burning, half the crew was dead, and they were surrounded by enemy ships. But they had made it. "Deploying Reaper Protocol," Null announced. "All crew brace for." She never finished. A Devourer weapon struck the bridge. Null was killed instantly, along with half the bridge crew. The executive officer, a man named, took command. Blood ran down his face from a head wound, but his voice was steady. "Deployment continuing. 15 seconds." Felt the ship shudder as the virus launched. The pod flew toward the Nexus, a tiny speck against the massive structure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The virus entered the Nexus and began spreading. The Devourer network, connected through biological links, transmitted the infection throughout the swarm. Watched through his instruments as Devourer ships began convulsing, their organic hulls breaking down at the cellular level. The enemy ship screamed. Could hear it through the communications array, a sound of pure agony transmitted across all frequencies. Millions of Devourer entities dying simultaneously, their biological network collapsing. In his instruments detected something he hadn't expected. The Devourers weren't mindless monsters. They were intelligent, and they were terrified. He received fragmentary communications, desperate transmissions from the dying swarm. They weren't conquerors. They were refugees. Something worse had driven them from their home galaxy, something so terrible they chose to flee and consume rather than face it. They had been desperate, starving, running from an even greater horror. And humanity had killed them all. recorded it all, even as his heart broke. There were no good species and bad species, just survivors doing what they must. The nexus collapsed. The massive structure broke apart, its biological components dissolving into cosmic dust. The Devourer fleet died with it. Billions of entities, ended in minutes by a weapon humans had created. The Indomitable was dying too. The ship's hull had been breached in a dozen places. Life support was failing. Of the 500 crew who had left Earth, fewer than 100 remained alive. Activated the emergency beacon. This is the Indomitable, mission successful, Reaper protocol deployed. All Devourer forces in this sector are neutralized. We request pickup for survivors. His voice broke on the last word. He was crying, not from fear or pain, but from exhaustion and loss. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Activated his emergency stasis pod, the one he had been given at the start of the mission. It would preserve him until rescue arrived, if rescue arrived. Before he sealed himself inside, he recorded one final message. "This is Ambassador Concordat Observer, documenting the end of the Devourer War. Humanity sacrificed 40 million of their people to save the galaxy. They built weapons of incredible cruelty and used them without hesitation. They showed us what monsters we must become to survive. We won. The galaxy is safe. God forgive us all for what we did. And God help us if we ever face something worse, because now we know we're capable of anything." He sealed the pod and let the darkness take him. Rescue came 2 days later. The Indomitable was a floating wreck, but 73 humans survived in various emergency shelters throughout the ship. Was among them, his stasis pod recovered from the observation deck. The war ended in 3 days. With the Nexus destroyed, the remaining Devourer forces across the galaxy collapsed. Ships stopped moving, troops stopped fighting. The swarm was dead. The Concordat had been saved. But at what cost? The post-war council met on neutral ground. Attended, still weak from his ordeal. He watched as Concordat species debated humanity's fate. Some wanted to celebrate them as heroes. Others wanted to demilitarize them immediately. They feared humans more than they had feared the Devourers. "They built weapons no civilized species should possess," argued Ambassador. "They killed with efficiency that terrifies us. What happens when humanity decides we are the enemy?" Colonel represented humanity. She was one of Sergeant Jin's soldiers who had survived Harper's stand. She stood before the council, her body still bearing scars from the 17 days of fire. "We saved you," she said simply. "Not because you asked, not because you could pay us, but because it was right. We lost 40 million people doing it, and now you want to punish us for being effective soldiers." "We want assurance that humanity won't turn their weapons on us," replied. Smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "You want assurance? Here it is. We are not like you. We have lived with war since we climbed down from trees. We've fought each other, fought our world, fought everything. We've survived by being better at violence than anything else. That doesn't turn off just because the current enemy is dead." She leaned forward. "But here's what you need to understand. We chose to save you. We could have stayed in our space, defended our own worlds, and let the rest of you burn. We didn't. We sent our children to die for your children. We built weapons of horror and used them on your enemies, not on you. Try to cage us, try to limit us, try to control us, and you'll learn what happens when you turn humanity from ally to enemy. We'll protect you because we choose to. We'll defend the galaxy because it's right. But never, ever forget what we're capable of if you betray that trust." The council chamber fell silent. The vote was unanimous. Humanity received full military autonomy and a permanent seat on the Concordat Council, not out of gratitude, out of fear. Recordings became required viewing for all Concordat species. "Know your allies," read the mandate. "Know what they sacrificed. Know what they're capable of." Months later, visited Earth. He wanted to see the memorials for the 40 million dead. They covered acres of land, stone markers stretching to the horizon. Each stone bore a name, a face, a story. A human child approached him, maybe 10 years old. "Are you Ambassador, the one who went to the Nexus?" "Yes. My mother died there. She was an engineer, doctor." His breath caught. "Your mother was a hero. She saved us all." The child looked up at him with eyes. "People say humans are heroes. Others say we're villains. Which are we?" Knelt down to the child's level. He thought about everything he had seen. The violence, the sacrifice, the terrible, beautiful courage of these impossible humans. "You're survivors," he said finally, "and that's far more terrifying than either." The child nodded slowly, as if understanding something beyond their years. "Mom said the same thing before she left. She said humans survive, always." Stood and looked out over the endless field of memorial stones. 40 million stories, 40 million sacrifices, 40 million reasons the galaxy was still here. He had watched humanity rush into war. He had seen them embrace violence with terrifying efficiency. He had witnessed their willingness to sacrifice everything for others. Now he knew why the cosmos dreaded their might. Not because they could destroy, many species could destroy, but because humans could destroy without breaking, kill without hesitation, sacrifice without regret. They could become monsters to fight monsters, then return home and read bedtime stories to their children as if the blood washed off that easily. They were protectors and predators, saviors and killers, heroes and horrors. They were humanity. And the galaxy would never be the same.